Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the age of illusion. Now, if you thought that politics and media and online content wasn't confusing enough, last week I saw some examples of the latest AI video-generated software taking the faces of politicians and making them say whatever they want, even creating alternative events of history. And it's now getting to the point where even I, who grew up in the time before the internet, I can't really even tell the difference was real or not. So I'm honest, I'm pretty terrified because our society is already confused and divided. But some positivity I got from it is that maybe, actually, if we can't agree on what a shared online reality is, maybe it's time to boycott the internet and come back to a shared physical reality. So if you're feeling confused in this pondering, I'm going to share 4 methods that I believe we can all implement in order to stay grounded in the age of illusion and online fakery. So stay tuned. Hi folks, how's it going? Welcome to another pondering video on the Deep Dive channel. I'm here in the woods, just packing things up for winter. For those who are watching the video version, it's really misty. It's a misty morning, adding to the age of illusion vibes. So bit of a backstory. Essentially last week, I was going to film a different pondering video on a completely different subject, and then I saw these examples of the latest AI, I think it was Sora 2, it might be the software, these videos, and already it's showing some examples of how it can be used to just completely manipulate politics and even history. And I'm not gonna lie, it kind of threw me into a few days of depression. I just decided not to film the pondering video, and I just kind of sat in it and I was just like really, humans? Like, did we have to go and invent that? Like, is that really useful? Is that going to bring any good? And then I thought, wait, hang on. Found Abidiosi content. I've got like hours of my face on the internet. And then I just thought, wait, so surely someone could just train an AI video to make a fake version of me saying whatever they wanted, promoting whatever products or something. So I spent a few days looking into how I can protect my content, and even looking into legally protecting my likeness. Who knew that was going to be a thing? Obviously we've all known this was coming, but I guess it just shocked me how soon it happened. I kind of thought maybe it was going to take a bit longer. So I kind of sat feeling a bit down about it all for a few days, and then I thought, I'm not one to spread fear. I don't like the whole fear-mongering stuff that people do in social media is adding more to the fear pot. I'm all for actionable positivity. So I was like, okay, well, what positives can come from this? And then I thought, well, actually, if it gets to the point, every time you open your phone, you go on the news, go on social media, and you actually can't really trust anything, that's either going to drive you completely insane or just drive people off the internet and maybe come back to being humans again. Because guess what, folks? Humans were actually doing perfectly all right before the internet. I know it's convenient, but I'm a 90s child. 90s was sweet. Even if we're not going to boycott the internet completely, maybe go back to a simpler version of it. I don't know. But anyway, I was pulling out some positivity, and then I thought about this, really deeply about what does it mean to be real? What does it mean to really trust what you see and trust the reality? Now, of course, I try to spend as much of my time outside and with real people, but then I also create online content. But I like to think I've still got, one foot in the dirt, very much in the physical reality. But just thinking about how the average person spends so much time online, they might not even have a toolkit. If someone's main reality, if someone's majority of the day is their reality is seen through glass, then they might not even have tools to come back to a physical reality. So I thought, okay, so is there any sort of actionable points? So it's what, every time I feel down about stuff, I always like to break it down, think about it, and come back to some actionable points. So I've come up with 4, which I'll share in this pondering. Feel free to leave your own in the comments below. But on the theme of trusting reality again. So the first 2 are more physical, practical ones, and the second 2 are more philosophical, psychological, and spiritual ones. So let's take a walk in the woods, in the misty woods. If you hear some cows moo in the background, I've got some Highland cows as neighbours who are probably lost in the mist, so they're mooing really loudly. So that's what that noise is. Anyway, so the first one, the first method on how to stay grounded in the age of illusion, it's one I've mentioned many times before. Get off the screen and get back into your body. Get out of your mind and back into your body. It comes back to the ABC of survival, which I've talked about in a pondering before. Attention, breathing, circulation. Right? With this one, it's just having practices that bring us right back into the visceral sensation of reality. Because online content, although it's very addictive and it sucks us in, it's really only visual and auditory, right? It doesn't smell, it doesn't feel. So, having practices that come back into your body, into feeling the blood pumping around your veins, into feeling hot and cold, into feeling tiredness, right? So some good ones, of course, exercise, breathing exercises, cold water exposure, sports, anything like that, right? Really simple one of coming back into a physical reality. What I would recommend is practices that I like to sort of describe as a healthy slap in the face. It's like giving yourself a sort of something slightly shocking. So cold water therapy, sparring, go to a jiu-jitsu class, go fight with some sticks with your friends, something that's like quite shockingly just gets you out of your head, gets you out of just the nonsense that's been fed to us on the internet. So, a healthy slap in the face. This sort of slap in the face, I quite like that metaphor, because imagine if your friend was asleep and you really needed to get them up, or was unconscious. That's like enough of a slap in the face that they're going to wake up. Not so hard that you're going to hurt them, but not so soft that they're not going to wake up. So it's almost like practices that you're doing that to yourself. It's like, it's like a shock, a slap in the, so a hard workout, a cold water dip, a sparring session, right? That's the first one. Get off the screens and into your body. Back into the body, back into the breath. Okay. Second one, social alternatives, right? Remembering, practicing how to be social. I listened to a podcast about this the other day of data coming out that adolescents these days have stopped drinking. Like, drinking's not cool anymore, and people are sort of celebrating, isn't that good? But actually, the average teenager is just not going out at all, right? And is just not socializing at all. And yeah, the podcast talking about how we're worried about people just forgetting basic social skills. So, going out and practicing social skills. Now, again, I grew up in a time, well, my adolescence, smartphones were only just coming in. They weren't particularly good, but they were just coming in my kind of late adolescence. So again, it's not that big a deal for me, this idea of just going out and socializing. and social alternatives. But potentially for the average adolescent and child who's had nothing but screens, this could actually be really difficult. So, it could be fun things, just anything that's away from a screen. Board games, D&D, I don't know, sports. Just anything that is human interaction away from screens. And yeah, I think potentially maybe all of us are actually losing practice in that. And especially because there's now so many different viewpoints. I felt like before the internet, a village or everyone in your neighborhood all had a pretty shared view of reality. And they might have had some disagreements on politics and things like that. But I don't think there's ever been a point in history where we have disagreed on some of the fundamentals. Fundamentals of what's going on. So, potentially there's a lot of practice that we all need to do in terms of being able to talk to each other again. So those are the first two ones, really simple ones. Get off the screen and into your body and practice being sociable. Now let's get into some of the more spiritual, philosophical ones I was pondering about. So the third one for me is practicing sobriety. So, now, sobriety. Now, I've never been particularly a person of excess, but I'm definitely not a teetotaler, right? I like the fruits of life, you could say. But increasingly, I don't know, maybe the older I get, or just when I just see stuff that's going on in the world and stuff that my algorithm is feeding me online, I just get this craving for clear-mindedness, for a steadiness of mind, right? I don't know if I'll ever be a completely teetotaler, but yeah, I'm having this craving for just sobriety. And again, if we're coming back to trying to have a stable and shared view of reality, being intoxicated, whether that's through drugs, alcohol, or even, fear and anxiety fed to you by social media, or the whole dopamine hits from everything that you can get on your smartphone, from games to social media. When you're intoxicated, you do not have a stable view of reality, you could say. Now, just thinking about, say, my group of friends and people that I know and the crowds that I hang out with, and just thinking about the diversity of views of reality that I hear from people. Yeah, again, it's making me crave a sober life and a sober way of mind. So let's start with some of the more mind-shaking substances, okay? Psychedelics. Psychedelics have seen a big rise in the last decade or so. In many ways, I think this is good when done with intention, with therapeutic intention, with right set and setting, especially if your mind is closed, it's locked up in depression or belief systems. Using certain psychedelics with discipline, right dosage, set and setting can be beneficial. So in that sense, I think it's good that there has been an increase in the use of psychedelics, and especially all the research that's being done and the benefits of some of the substances. However, if you asked me 10 years ago, not as long as that, 5 years ago, I was all for mushrooms and how it's going to save the world. But actually, these days, its increase in popularity has also mean there's an increase of cowboy shamans who will just take people off in random, retreats and feed them 3 different psychedelics and, you know, sort of try and make it a vaguely spiritual experience, amalgamation of different completely culturally appropriated practices, and think that it's healing. Okay, sometimes it is, but I've also lots of friends who have essentially had mental breakdowns after stuff like that. So if we're gonna try and have a shared view of reality, yeah, stuff like that out of context and not done properly obviously doesn't help. Okay, so that's the more extreme inversions. Now let's go down to substances that are more common in our society. So caffeine, cannabis, and alcohol. These are the more obvious things that change our filter of reality, right? Caffeine gives the filter of our reality, it's kind of slightly sharper and harder, a little bit more anxiety provoking. So when social media and things and news are thrown at you when you're under the influence of caffeine, I feel like you're gonna be more influenced by your cortisol pathways, and your decisions and your actions are under the influence of that Stress. Now, cannabis has the filter of kind of softening things, but then in the long run, it can have a long-term effect of disassociation, I think the word is, just actually feeling a complete separation from reality. Now, alcohol is another one that, again, has a numbing filter of reality. It has a bit of like screw everything kind of attitude, which again is why people take it. But again, when we are trying to have a shared view of reality, is that numbing necessarily helpful? Is that screw it attitude necessarily helpful? So obviously those are the more obvious things of sobriety. But then it comes down to the little things, right? You could be under the influence of an ideology, right? How does that make you feel? Again, it's not about what's good or bad. You know, we can have moderation, but it's just aiming at a state of mind that's a bit more stable, and a state of mind that can be less influenced by outside sources. So hopefully that one makes sense. Aiming at sobriety. The last one, the fourth one, sharpening the sword of your integrity. Practicing integrity, right? If there's anything that our politics and our media is severely lacking, it is integrity, right? There's very few role models, it seems, out there that can give us a good example of integrity. Now, I've been pondering quite a lot about this word, integrity. It's a good word, right? The definition on a moral sense, right, is that your actions and your words align, your values, you've got, you're very set in your values, and your actions and your words and your values align. But then we can also use this word integrity for physical things like a building, right? You'd say the building has good integrity or has bad integrity. That means it's just not stable. Now, I read a book recently called The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden. Really good book. Bit of an old school book these days, but really good. And he has one of the 6 pillars of self-esteem is integrity. And he argues that integrity is not just a moral virtue, but it's actually a necessity for self-esteem. And it ultimately comes down to not lying to yourself, right? If you don't want politicians to lie to you, if you don't want social media to be fake, if you don't want online reality, people just creating fake news and fake history with this new AI software. If you don't want that to be fake, if you don't want people to lie to you, then stop lying to yourself. And the way Brandon describes how this can happen in our own psyche in this book, 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, he says how when we sort of lie to ourselves, we actually create a split. We actually create a falseness in ourself. And we actually stop trusting our own words and maybe trusting our own sense of reality. So that's why I thought, wow, okay, this is actually something that we can all practice that actually helps in this confusing times. So let me give you some examples of just little ones that every day we're all guilty of. It could be something like you've said something, you've said an opinion or done something, and in the sort of front of your mind you said that it was because you believed it. But then deeper down you know that you only did that to try fit in with a group. You've created a split, you've created a distrust within yourself. Right? It could be that you're preaching something, maybe something, a health benefit or a practice that you say that you do, but that's actually in reality, you're not doing that at all. But how else might we be false to ourselves that creates an inner split? How about feigning affection? Right? We might act like we love someone and care about someone, but we actually don't. This then creates a slight split within ourselves, which means when people are loving to us, we don't really believe it. Or if you're really nice to someone's face, if you're all schmoozing to them and sucking up to them and being really nice to them, and then as soon as they've gone, you start bitching about them behind their back. Right? On a conscious level, you might think that's okay. But underneath, there's a part of yourself that then doesn't trust you. You've created an inner split, which means when someone, again, is nice to you, you don't really believe it. How else might this happen? Acting differently around other people, right? Different people. Now, we all do this to a certain extent, right? We might be slightly different when we're with our friends compared to when we're with our co-workers and when we're with our parents. But if you're drastically different, it's like the more different you are in those different social situations, the bigger the split is within you. Now, of course, it's a practice. None of us are going to be perfect at that all the time. It's fantastic if you have a close friend or a spouse that can act as a mirror and being like, hey, like, you said you were going to do that, but actually you're not doing that. Or, hey, you promote this sort of thing online, but actually I see you doing this. Like, what one is you? What one is you? And having someone to be a loving mirror, to do that in a nice way, and for you to do that to them, is a fantastic way to ground ourselves into a more stable shared reality. And again, integrity and sobriety, maybe there's something there that I am craving. It's like a consistency and a stability of mind and personality. I mean, that's a better way of putting it. So, there's my 4 things that I thought about while I was sitting there feeling a bit depressed about AI video content. Ground yourself in the physical reality, get off the screens and into your body. 1 foot in the dirt, that's my saying. Number 2, practice social things, social alternatives, get away from screens. Let's learn how to communicate and be humans again. Number 3, practicing sobriety. Doesn't necessarily mean to be a complete teetotaler, but seek stability of mind and stability of filters of consciousness. And finally 4, practice integrity. Sharpen it. I feel like when I think of integrity, if integrity was an object, it would be a sword. You want to sharpen it and hone it and keep it consistent. So there's a random pondering for you folks. Please leave some comments, anything that you believe is other things that we need to do as a society, as individuals, to help us stay grounded in this crazy, confusing world. How we can start to boycott the internet. It is time, folks. Maybe it is time. Yep, thanks for watching. Thanks for everyone who's been supporting this channel. It's been really fun doing these deep dives. As always, over on Resilient Roots, we're doing monthly calls. We have done some ponderings that are similar to this. We've done some on social connection, how to reclaim proper social skills. But yeah, maybe I'll be doing another one regarding creating shared realities. So yeah, I'll put a link to Resilient Roots, that's always there. And yeah, have a good one, folks. Remember to go outside and talk to real people and just step out and above the noise. See you in another pondering soon. Cheery bye.